Picture this. September 1st, 1939, 4:45 a.m. A German battleship opens fire on a Polish garrison. Within hours, 1.5 million German troops pour across the border in what would become history's most devastating demonstration of a revolutionary new way of war. But here's what's truly shocking about Blitzkrieg. It wasn't supposed to work. The tanks were originally designed for air defense. The commanders argued with each other. And the most crucial decision that shaped the entire war, it happened because someone was worried about mud. This is the untold story of Lightning War. Not the myth of German military perfection you've heard, but the chaotic, improvised, and surprisingly fragile reality that changed everything. The Germany of 1937 was a nation haunted by ghosts. The trenches of World War I had swallowed an entire generation, and Adolf Hitler was obsessed with one terrifying possibility: getting stuck in another war of attrition. By November 1937, in a document historians call the Horseback Memorandum, Hitler had laid out his desperate gamble. Germany would strike fast, strike hard, and win quickly, because they simply couldn't afford to do anything else. But here's the irony that shaped everything. Germany was weaker than it looked. Facing numerically superior enemies with limited resources, they had to bet everything on speed and surprise. It was a strategy born not from strength, but from desperation. Enter the architects of Lightning War. Adolf Hitler, the Austrian corporal turned dictator, whose micromanaging would both enable and nearly destroy his own military machine. And then there was Erwin Rommel, just 41 years old when the war began, a general whose audacity would earn him the nickname Desert Fox. Rommel embodied everything Blitzkrieg represented: aggressive, fast-thinking, and willing to take risks that made his superiors break out in cold sweats. The German High Command, the OKH staff, found themselves caught between Hitler's impatience and commanders like Rommel who pushed their luck too far. These tensions weren't just personality conflicts. They would literally determine the fate of nations. On the Allied side, commanders who had trained to fight the last war found themselves paralyzed by something they had never imagined. Their hesitation would cost hundreds of thousands of lives. September 1st, 1939. Dawn breaks over Poland, and with it, the world changes forever. Lieutenant Hans Müller, 23 years old, crewed a German Panzer as it rolled across the Polish border. Years later, he would remember that morning with crystal clarity. The ground shook as our tanks rolled forward. The roar was deafening. Enemy lines crumbled before we even arrived. Fear mixed with excitement. We felt unstoppable. But in Warsaw, 29-year-old Maria Kowalska experienced that same morning very differently. Bombs fell like thunder. Smoke and fire surrounded us. We hid in cellars, the earth trembling beneath us. No one trusted the silence between explosions. This was Blitzkrieg in its raw, terrifying reality. Not just military tactics, but coordinated terror from the sky, the ground, and the airwaves. German Stukas dove from the clouds with sirens screaming, designed not just to destroy, but to paralyze with fear. Panzer divisions punched through defensive lines while infantry followed to mop up resistance. Radio communications kept the entire machine coordinated in real time, something no army had ever achieved before. Within just weeks, Poland was overwhelmed. The numbers tell the story. Roughly 8,000 German dead and 27,000 wounded against a nation of 35 million people. It wasn't just military superiority. It was a completely new form of warfare that caught everyone off guard. But here's where the story gets complicated. Those early panzers rolling across Poland, they weren't originally designed for ground assault at all. German tanks had been intended largely for air defense, repurposed only through the innovative thinking of commanders who saw possibilities others missed. Blitzkrieg wasn't the product of some master plan. It was brilliant improvisation masquerading as strategy. May 1940. The German war machine turned west toward France, and Erwin Rommel was about to write himself into history. In his personal diary, he captured the essence of lightning war. Speed and surprise are our allies. The enemy stumbles in confusion. Hesitation means defeat. Yet High Command frets over our advance. They fail to see victory's face. Rommel's 7th Panzer Division moved so fast through France they were nicknamed the Ghost Division, because German High Command lost track of where they were. In one day, they advanced over 30 miles, leaving behind exhausted infantry, scattered supply lines, and a trail of confused enemy units who couldn't figure out what had hit them. The weather seemed to conspire with the Germans. Grey, overcast skies provided perfect cover for surprise attacks while exhausted soldiers on both sides marched 30+ miles daily with minimal rest. The constant noise, artillery barrages, tank engines, and air raids mixed with the stench of smoke and burnt oil left everyone in a state of heightened anxiety. But then came the decision that changed everything. As German panzers raced toward the Channel coast, trapping hundreds of thousands of Allied troops around Dunkirk, Hitler and the German High Command issued one of the most controversial orders of the entire war. Halt. The reasons reveal everything about Blitzkrieg's hidden vulnerabilities. The marshy terrain around Dunkirk was a nightmare for tanks. Private John Thompson, a British soldier who lived through the evacuation, later observed with bitter irony, "The marshy land was a nightmare for tanks. We joked bitterly, how could such machines fight here? The city's fate was decided by mud as much as men." German commanders worried about overextension. Their lightning-fast advance had outrun their supply lines and left armored units dangerously exposed. The halt order wasn't strategic brilliance. It was mechanical reality meeting geographical obstacles. Corporal Alan Price of the British Expeditionary Force experienced those crucial days from the beach. "We knew the tanks were coming too fast. Orders came to retreat to the beaches. The skies were filled with German planes roaring overhead. Every step felt like a race with death. Over 300,000 Allied troops escaped from Dunkirk. The very speed that made Blitzkrieg so effective had created a gap that allowed a massive portion of Allied forces to survive. Forces that would later form the core of Allied counteroffensives. Victory had contained the seeds of future defeat. Here's what makes Blitzkrieg truly fascinating. It succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations while simultaneously creating the conditions for its own failure. The psychological impact was enormous. The myth of German military invincibility born from those lightning campaigns in Poland and France, shaped Allied strategy for years. But it also shaped German strategy in dangerous ways. Success bred overconfidence, and overconfidence bred strategic mistakes that would prove fatal when Germany turned east toward the Soviet Union. The debates started immediately and continue today. Was Blitzkrieg a coherent strategy or a series of tactical improvisations that exploited Allied weaknesses? The evidence suggests both. German innovation was real. The coordination of tanks, aircraft, and infantry had never been achieved before. But so was Allied unpreparedness and organizational dysfunction. British military analysts struggled to understand what had hit them. Some emphasized their own operational failures rather than German brilliance. The truth, as always, was more complex. German success came from exploiting Allied weaknesses with genuine tactical innovation, but also from luck, timing, and circumstances that wouldn't necessarily repeat. Perhaps the greatest irony is that Blitzkrieg's emphasis on speed consistently ran up against logistical reality. Fuel shortages, mechanical breakdowns, and supply line problems regularly stalled advances. The myth of perfectly coordinated lightning war obscured the constant improvisation and problem-solving that kept German forces moving. The German High Command's criticism of field commanders like Rommel reveals internal tensions that plagued the entire war effort. Rommel's aggressiveness contrasted sharply with Hitler's growing caution and the staff officers' concerns about logistics. These weren't minor personality conflicts. They reflected fundamental disagreements about how to fight a war. Tank crews pushed their machines to the breaking point while mechanics worked around the clock to keep units operational. The human cost wasn't just in battle casualties, it was in the exhaustion, stress, and constant pressure of a form of warfare that demanded everything from everyone involved. The civilians caught in Blitzkrieg's path experienced something unprecedented in warfare. Maria Kowalska's testimony captures what it meant to be on the receiving end. The eerie silence before attacks, the overwhelming chaos during bombardments, and the psychological impact of facing an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. These weren't just military campaigns, they were laboratories for understanding how modern societies respond to sudden, overwhelming violence. The lessons learned in Poland and France would shape military thinking for decades.